Hello Year 2. Now this week in our English we're going to be looking at the genre instruction writing. Now we have looked at instructions before, so I'm hoping we can remember a couple of things that we learnt previously that we can try and include this time round in our writing this week. We're going to have to think about what instructions are. We're going to have to think about why we might use instructions, and then we're going to have a little look at things we might include when we write a good set of instructions. Let's begin by thinking about what instructions actually are. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think instructions are? Well, instructions are basically a step-by-step guide on how to do something or how to complete something. Instructions will tell you what you need to complete this activity and will break how to complete it into steps. So what do we use instructions for? Have a think. Can you think of any reasons why we might need to use instructions? There are loads of things we could use instructions for. Here's an example of using instructions to help us build our favourite Lego models. We might use instructions to teach us how to cook a tasty dish, such as this delicious pasta bake. We might need to follow instructions to teach us how to play one of our board games at home. You might have seen your parents using instructions like this to build flat pack furniture. It's always quite complicated to follow these instructions. Now, I always think it's really lovely to find real life examples of writing and to help you understand why maybe we're looking at this genre. So if you want to pause the video here, you might like to have a look around your house, maybe inside some of your games, maybe some of your books, to see what different types of instructions you can find. We're now going to have a little look at what makes good instructions. Now, I have found some examples of some instructions somebody has written about how to make a cup of tea. Now, there are two examples. One example is a really good example and one is a not so good example. I want you to have a look and decide which one you think is the good example, which one is the not so good example, but I need you to really think about why. Why is it a good example? What features has it got that make it a good example? What features does the not so good example have which make it a not so good example? So have a look, have a talk, and then this will help us create what we call a success criteria for our instruction writing, so we know how to create a good set of instructions. So here are your two examples of instructions. Here's example 1 and here's example 2. Which one do you think is the good example and which one do you think is the not so good example? I think we all agree that this one here is probably the good example. But let's think about why. What is it that makes the second example a good example? Let's look first of all about the structure of the instructions, what they look like on the page. What's different about example 1 compared to example 2, about what they look like on the page? So example 2 has, first of all, a what you need section. Does example 1 have that? No. This tells you the things that you're going to need to make your cup of tea. It's also got a second section, a method section. Now, as well as this, you can see that the method has been broken into steps. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. Example 1 hasn't got these steps. The what you need section is also broken into bullet points. so you can see very clearly what you actually need. These instructions also have a title explaining what the instructions are about. They have an introduction here explaining again what the instructions are about, and at the bottom they have a conclusion telling you what you have learned, summarising what you've learned. So let's have a look at some more techniques that you can use when you write instructions. Example 1 and 2 again. So what things can you spot in example 2 that haven't been used in example 1 very well? The first thing that I can spot are time conjunctions. First, whilst, next. Now there's one being used in the first example, but they're not used very well. So in your instructions you should be using time conjunctions, and your instructions should also be in the correct order. Now example 1, the instructions are written in a very strange order, aren't they? Doesn't really make sense. We use a certain type of sentence in our instructional writing. What do we call this type of sentence then? We call them commands. So make sure your sentences are command sentences. They have to use those imperative verbs, those bossy verbs, because they're telling you what to do. What other techniques can you see being used? I can see capital letters and full stops. And have you noticed that a new instruction is written on a new line as well? It's not all written in one paragraph like this. It's really thought about separating those instructions up into the steps. A good technique to use as well are something called adverbs. Do you see one here? Carefully. That shows you how to do something. So our verb is to pour the boiling water, but we're going to be doing it carefully, so including some adverbs. Now in your introduction you might want to include a question to really attract the reader to the piece of writing as well. So there's some techniques which you could be including in your good instructions. So I'm going to show you one more example of instructions, and I'm going to call these an even better example. As you can see, they have the same structure. They've still got their title, the introduction, the what you need, the method and the conclusion. The what you need is still in bullet points. The method is still numbered 1 to 7. We've still got time words and adverbs in there. But if you look at these instructions, they're a lot more detailed. Now, the clearer the instruction is, the better it is for the person who's following it. You have to be really precise in what you want them to do, what you're asking them to do, making it really clear in your steps. So if you want to do an even better job with writing your instructions, really think about going that extra mile with that detail you're including in them as well. So here is the final success criteria which you've created from all your talk today. You can use this to help you write your instructions later in the week on a subject of your choice. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Have a lovely rest of the week, and I will see you all soon.